right, we're up. This is the Hour Town with Troy By, and excited to welcome Guy Hardman here today.
Thank you for having me.
Guy is are you the founder of Rocket City Refugees?
Yeah, I'm one of the founders. Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll be diving all into that today. Just another of the great many nonprofits, 501c3s and the like here in Huntsville, Alabama, the greater Huntsville area, and also welcoming Kerry Straub, co-hosting.
Hey, good to be here.
Kerry, I thank him for setting up several guests that we've had recently, right? Kerry had his own episode a while back talking about Crime Stoppers. So, Guy, man, I don't know really where to start, but how much do you know of just current events wise, right? What's going on today? Today is October the 9th, I believe, right?
Yep.
2023.
Yep.
And all the stuff going on in Gaza and Israel. Are you well versed in that by chance?
A bit. I mean,
yeah.
You can think about it. The Israelis have been fighting for a strip of desert for a long, long time, and they're surrounded by people who want to push them off into the ocean. It's horrible what's happening there.
Yeah.
I've been watching it the last couple of days, and I worry very much about the people and about the ability of Israel to maintain control of their area.
What has really, in your mind, what really brought it to this boiling point of the attacks on Saturday?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been listening to a lot of the interviews and the people on TV talking about some recent actions by the Israeli military in the Al-Aqsa Mosque and other things, and I just don't know. I've also heard opinions that the recent release of some of the money back to Iran, even though it's not supposed to be used for military purposes, has emboldened them because it frees up money for them to do other things, and that's what it's all about. The bottom line is we'll never know, but it's horrible what's happening. Military action is military action, but going into towns and homes to attack civilians and families, that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, and they're just the very real thing about social media is you're seeing these clips of
real time.
Someone's on TikTok at a party, or what doesn't matter if it's YouTube or wherever, Facebook, and then seconds later they were snatched up, right, and kidnapped,
or even at the what was it, a concert?
Yeah,
they were at a concert, and hundreds die.
Yeah.
You're going to a concert. I mean, that's like saying going to the Rocks of the South, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people come in and start shooting things up.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the most heavily defended borders on the planet.
Right.
And with a lot of low-tech solutions, they were able to do a lot of damage. So that's something that we should definitely pay attention to in this country and in every other, for that matter.
So they've probably been doing some planning for some time, given that low-tech, right, and how well it's been guarded, how to penetrate.
No doubt.
Well, let's just start with the Rocket City Refugees. Okay. I think we'll touch on your career and kind of what has led you to this. But if you could, I'd like to just spend some time on first how you became involved, like interested, passionate about helping refugees. Maybe we start there. And then ultimately, how's that led to? You know what? I need to be a part of starting something here in Huntsville to help out this crisis. And this, I think it's Afghan specifically. Is that correct?
That's why we started. That's our primary focus. But we have on several occasions helped some Ukrainians and some other countries through churches in the area that were helping them as their conflict started. Our baseline requirement is that someone be, first of all, legally here in the United States, and then vetted on some level by the federal government, because a lot of us are in either law enforcement or the intelligence community actively. So, we have to make sure that we're coloring with inside the lines, so to speak, and especially when it relates to national security stuff. We don't want to violate those laws and constitutional precepts that we hold dear and that started us down this path. So if you ask me, how did I become involved in Rocket City Refugees? I'll tell you, it's the absolute last thing that I would have ever expected myself to have my name on. And to tell you that story, we'll have to go back to 2011.
Go ahead.
I went to Afghanistan as a civilian to lead a civilian counterintelligence team. was originally supposed to stay up in Bagram at the air base there, but when I got there was no room at the inn, so to speak, and they sent me south to a town called Ghazni. It was in the kind of southeast-ish portion of the country, up in the mountains, living on a base with a bunch of Polish special forces, a few Americans, and Afghans, of course. So there had been a problem with the guard force, which were also used for other missions. So by day they're security guards, but they go out on patrols and other missions with some of the SOF elements that were based there. And they had a problem, so they disbanded the old team and started building it back. And one of the jobs that I did there was screening local nationals who came on for employment, for suitability, make sure they weren't being controlled by the bad guys and so on, make sure they were going to be a good hire. So a guy by the name of Zafrullah came in one day, and everybody there learned early on that if you say you were with Special Forces at some time in the past, that's kind of the golden ticket, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody would say that. And to him, I said, okay, prove it. He said, well, I need a few days. I have to go home. He's from a different province, a good ways away towards the border with Pakistan, called Paktika. He said, I'll be back in 3 days. So he went back home, brought back a stack of certificates to me, and as I'm going through them, I recognized one of the names. The team sergeant, the E8 on a team that he had been with about 8 or so years earlier, was the junior engineer on a team that I was attached to back in the 90s at Fort Bragg. And so I reached out to him on one of the networks and explained what was going on. He said, oh, I know that guy, and everything he's telling you is true. He's probably not even telling you the whole truth because he's very humble, but he's a good worker, and you can build the team around him. So we did. These are mostly ethnic Tajiks from eastern Afghanistan, again in Paktika, and they, there's kind of an allegory to the Israel conflict because these guys are surrounded by people who just don't like them, and so they have become over the centuries very good fighters, and they're kind of the break glass in time of war guys. So when Alexander the Great came through, the Brits, the Russians, these people fought him back. So we built the team around him, around Zafrullah. Very good guy, big family, big heart, just a big teddy bear. But when it came time to do business, he was ready for it, as were the rest of his cousins and brothers and everybody. And in fact, at the time I met Z in 2011, he'd been fighting for almost 10 years alongside Army Special Forces. They literally landed in his backyard in October 2001, said, hey, we're going to go get some bad guys if you want to go with us. Pick up your packs and go. And Z and 4 of his brothers did just that. One was killed through the course of the fighting. Another, including him, made it out, and 2 remained behind to take care of their family. But this family, this clan, are all part of the Yusufzai tribe, and they're widely known. And they were being hunted, even then, in country by Taliban, Gulbuddin, and the other extremist groups who were seeking to keep Afghanistan unsettled. And his dream always was come to the United States, come to the United States. I had to talk him down off that ledge several times because at that time there really wasn't a path for it. And more to the point, he had more than one wife, which I knew wouldn't be recognized here. And that just caused a lot of problems. And I didn't want to tell him no because, that was his big dream.
Real quick, did he grow up pro-West? Okay, so that wasn't like he had a change in his own ideology as he got older.
Oh no, not at all.
Okay,
no, his father and all his uncles fought the Russians away with, so they were part of that group that repelled them.
Okay,
and can you explain, because you addressed it a little bit, but can you explain Afghan, just like when I was in Pakistan? I mean, it's tribal, and it's an area of, depending on where you live, that's your group. And can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it is. It's very tribal, and there is Sunni and Shia. So these guys are Sunni, and most of the eastern parts of Afghanistan are Sunni, and the Shia over to the west toward Iran. So the 3 main ethnic groups are the Hazara, the Tajiks, and the Pashtun.
Okay.
And the Pashtun were the primary ones who were involved with the Taliban, the Shia, and some other groups that they were associated with. That's not to say there were no Tajik bad guys, but none of these guys, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm. And no, they didn't. To be sure, there are some who had a change of heart. Either they really had a change of heart, or they just thought they would change to the team that decided to be winning at the time. Yeah. I don't know, but no, these guys have been on our side the whole time.
Okay.
So again, very good, good workers, good, honest people, just kind of salt of the earth. They were farmers and other agrarian type activities before the war, and then they beat their plowshares into swords, and now now that they're here, trying to get them to do the opposite. But anyway, I was there for about 2 years. I left in February of 2013, and in the weeks leading up to my departure, he and I made a communication plan, an emergency communication plan, because I knew I wouldn't be able to have regular contact with him. Mm-hmm. He was constantly changing locations and phone numbers, because even at that time he was being hunted, as was the rest of his family, for being very good at their job. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again, and there wasn't a day that passed in those 8 years that I didn't wonder, is he gone? Is he still around? Is his family alive? Or, are they all right? So January 2021, I got a call from the last hop in that chain. So the plan that I set up with him, back to our training, it had a couple of hops through different people that we knew in common, mm-hmm. not directly to me, because again, you never know if somebody's been turned, if they've had a change of heart. And I don't want now to be talking to this guy who's under somebody else's control. So the last hop in that chain contacted me and said, "Hey, Z's trying to get up with you. Here's his number." So I called him, and I started getting real-time reports on what was going on in Afghanistan as early as 7 months prior to when, the Armada happened in August of 2021. And what we saw in the news here was not 100% accurate. There was not we just woke up one day and whoopsie, the bad guys are back in town. There was a slow and methodical march back into Kabul, to the point that the senior government and military leaders there knew it and were withholding pay, which was United States money going in to pay the troops. By this time, most of these guys had transitioned either to some of the OGA paramilitary teams or Afghanistan's own internal service, NDS. It's kind of a hybridized FBI counterterrorism unit. So he didn't get paid for, I think it was almost 5 months. And now he's got a family of him, his wives, and 15 children to feed. Yeah. They weren't able to pay rent. They were living on the streets, and I'm getting these real-time, just horrible reports that were tearing my heart in two. Some friends and I, those who were involved with Rocket City Refugees and some other, were trying to develop a plan to be able to get them out, perhaps through a third country or, what have you. But we never done anything like this before on our own. It'd be a lot easier to do it if we had government or military support. But just Guy and Phil and Ron, that's not as easy to do. In the meantime, we were able to get money to them, so at least they had food. And he and his son, who was also a soldier at this time working for the NDS, their counterterrorism service, they had their wits about them, and they were able to keep moving and keep the family safe. Mm-hmm. Then we started hearing rumors of the airlift that eventually occurred in August, and they were able to get out on that. So they spent about a month in Qatar. Then they moved them up to Fort Dix, New Jersey, where they, for 4 months, were processing and being further vetted and so on and so forth. That's how Rocket City Refugees started, with that one phone call. And for the 4 months while they were sitting at Fort Dix, hey, my cousin wants to come to Alabama. My nephew wants to come to Alabama, and I can't tell them no. Mm-hmm. I know what they've been through.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. So I got a call one day from a lady from an organization called Inspiritus, which is, they used to be, I can't remember their old name, but they're the state refugee coordinator for Alabama. Each state has an organization who does that for the state. and they help with all the administration, the initial settling. They handle the stipend of money that each person was authorized by coming here, and so on and so forth. But in the interim, I was introduced to Global Ties Alabama and Jackie Scheit. They're an organization who does some refugee outreach as well, and a lot of the churches in Huntsville. The response was, amazing. We were able to outfit a whole house, starting with nothing but some good intentions.
Yeah.
So Huntsville really came out for us, and we joked around for a little while. Hey, we're basically running an off-the-books nonprofit, and then somebody said, "Well, why don't we do it for real?" And we did, and the process was a lot easier than I thought it should be. I thought there'd be a lot more vetting of us to see if we were above board or not. But you have to go through a few steps at both the state and the federal level. And as of May the 9th, 2022, we got our 501c3.
Okay.
So we've grown from just that initial family, which is now of 18, not just 17 anymore. We've had one birth, a little celebratory gunfire since they've been here. And now we have about 85 individuals on the books. Some we're providing direct support to, others that came here by other methods. There's one program called a sponsor circle where we three might get together and say we want to host a family. You have to prove so many months of living expenses, and they have this and that and the other thing. You go to the State Department and they say, here's your family. So a family here in Huntsville brought a family here to Huntsville by that method that we didn't know. We've provided some, support on the back end for them as well. And we're trying to grow. We have been kind of victims of our own success with the families that we have. And so now all of their cousins and brothers and uncles that went to other places with good promises and good intentions by people have seen what we've been able to do here for them, and they want to come too. And we'd love to have them, but it takes two things that we don't ever have enough of: money and volunteers. So if there's anybody out there in TV land that wants to make your charitable contribution before the end of the tax year or would like to help us out, please do give us a holler.
So what? Oh, go ahead, Kerry.
I was going to ask, have you approached different companies here in town? And what I mean by that is for
Sponsorship.
work. Well, sponsorship and work, so that when they come here, they're just not trying to.
Yeah, so that's one of the most important things to me is to get them off as many programs as possible.
Right.
Our welfare system in this country is already being dragged down enough. I don't want to add to it by these guys who I know don't want to be on it. Now, in the case of the extra large families, they do need some other, some extra help, and that will be for the foreseeable future. But yes, ACW Electric, they hired two of our guys as electricians apprentices, sight unseen. It's a veteran-owned company.
Right.
Two former Marines. Man, we cannot appreciate them enough. We've had some out at Polaris, Wayne Farms, Walmart in South Huntsville. All these places have been, wonderful, and we can't say enough about them. Oh, Redstone Village as well. So,
I mean, I'm just thinking. I mean, we can talk offline about what other companies that we can brainstorm and say, okay, 1, 2. I mean, as soon as getting them employed, getting them, part of contributing into our country as well.
Yeah, and that's another one of our requirements in the agreement that we make with them. All able-bodied adults will seek employment, right? Because that doesn't just get them off of those subsidies and other programs, but it helps them integrate into the community,
right?
And assimilate and learn English and learn customs and culture and that kind of stuff. And what we don't want to happen is that we just pick them up. And we had a couple in the beginning that thought they were just going to be yanked out of Kabul and put down in a little Afghan bubble somewhere. In a big city like D.C. or places in Texas on the West Coast, perhaps you might have that. But Huntsville doesn't have a huge Afghan community. I think we are it right now. So, all of those things are very important to get them to be on the path to being full-fledged Americans, whatever that means in 2023.
So the State Department is involved with documentation and such before they leave Afghanistan.
No.
That
most of them had no documentation whatsoever.
Okay.
Afghanistan was moving toward national ID cards, but if you live out in the hinterlands, you have something called a Tascara, which is kind of like our birth certificate. The way you get a Tascara is at some point after you can walk on your own, you walk to town with your parents and you go to the village elder, who's might be the only one there that can write, and they say, when were you born? Where were you born? Well, I was born in the winter because there was snow on the ground. Okay, 1 January. Just about everybody you meet over there, their birthday is either 1 January or 31 December because it's not something that's important in that part of the world.
Right.
So not everybody that came had documentation, and that's one of the things that causes us huge problems here because every different organization you go to, be it the ALEA or the DMV or this place or that, they want, because of their status here, which their status is category C11, humanitarian parolee. So they don't have green cards yet. They're in the asylum process with USCIS. And then some of them are also in the special immigrant visa pipeline, which doesn't put them to the front of the green card line. It puts them in a shorter line based on service to the United States. So a lot of them have got multiple lines in the water at once, but what they don't have is documentation that this organization here requires, but this one doesn't. And so I spend the bulk of my time trying to educate local and state agencies on the documentation requirements, and they just can't understand. Well, why don't they have a passport? They're from a foreign country and they're here. Do you have a passport? Well, no, I live here. Exactly, they live there. They didn't have any need to have a passport. So,
right.
It's little things like that eat up a lot of the time. But we're happy to do it because again, it gets them one step closer to fully, being a participant in the American economy and way of life.
Yeah, I was kind of just keying that question on, having a clearance myself, right? If you ever come in contact with a foreign national or have a relationship with a foreign national, right? You document it, you disclose that, right?
Oh, I've had to do a REMA paper.
And I'm sure you have, right? And so for you, then it's more of just to protect yourself or if anyone was to question you on that, like, hey, well, yeah, I'm working with these folks, but they are in some form of the process to become legitimate visitors in the United States.
Right.
Accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So did border customs, whatever, did they give you a point of contact, or every time you have to call a new person?
Oh yeah, I'm
that's what I thought.
The 800 number king. Yeah, you don't get a direct number.
You don't get a direct number to anybody.
And the difficulty again, even at the federal level when we're dealing with CIS, there are so many names that are the same, and there was so much confusion when they came through the different checkpoints along the way. Not everybody went through Qatar, but our guys went through Qatar. This huge family coming in the middle of the night caused a traffic jam in the lines, and so they split the family up. This was one of the first big things we had to solve. So they split the family up, and the Qatari agents that were doing it, half of them wrote the correct last name, Mohammadi, but the other half were Mohadi. Now it's the same family, but they wrote the Qatari version of Mohadi. So half of them had correct documentation, the employment authorization documents and social security cards when they were issued, and the other ones had the wrong one, and some of them had one of each. Okay. So it took months and months to get all that straight because every time you go, you get a new person, whether it's in person or on the phone, and you have to explain the whole situation again. And they look it up, and then they can't match this with this, and databases, and Well, and I've learned a lot about the federal government that I never thought I would have to learn, and that
and that's my point, right? If you want to call it train the person on the other end about all that, then I get it now, and then as soon as you hang up,
they dump it and they go on to the next one.
Right. And then you don't call that same person back.
Yeah.
Because, again, they don't give you a direct number. And I understand that, too.
Yeah.
But it's just that train up.
Now, what language were they having difficulties communicating when they hit Qatar? When they split them up? I mean,
Well, yeah, it's a completely different language, first of all. But I don't think that was it. I think it was just a matter of this line over here was doing what they thought was right. Yeah. And they speak English. All of the adult males,
Okay.
With the exception of one, speak English anyway. So it wasn't necessarily a language problem. I think it was just a expediency problem.
Right. So going back to that timeline, so about 7 months before that August
Yeah.
withdrawal, if you will, the Armada, that's when you got involved with Z.
Yeah.
And starting that process.
Yeah, that's when I reconnected with him. And like I said, I was getting those real-time reports about what was going on. And it was just, heart-wrenching to know that, first of all.
What kind of lies were we fed, or what was not accurate in what was portrayed to the public?
I don't want to say lies, but, we weren't getting all the information.
Okay.
Again, there were indications that the bad guys were marching back as early as late January of 2021.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into any of the details about that, but yeah, we didn't just wake up in the summer and it was happening. It was going on. And if my guy on the ground knew it,
right,
I would hope that somebody else did too.
Okay.
But we're just trying to move past that and, live in the future now. The past is done, and we just want them to, forget all those bad times, even though they can't, because still, the war is being waged against everybody who remains behind. Anybody who had who was touched by the United States, good or bad, they've got that on them. And the Taliban, who remain in control, are actively seeking out those folks. We've had, just in the 20 months that they've been here, I think 15 deaths, people being snatched from their homes and killed because they were a part of this family. 2 days after the Armada, Taliban busted in Kabul to Z's mother's house, roughed her up, looking for Z and his brother who escaped. And she said, he's not here. You'll never find him. And they said, we'll search for 1,000 years and we will find him, and then we'll kill them all.
Sheesh.
So, we're constantly battling those effects that aren't going to stop anytime soon, Yeah.
Now, what happened with all his wives are here?
One.
One of them.
One had to remain behind.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So, two of his brothers remained behind to take care of her, their families, and their mother.
Got it. It's clear, like the success you've all had, success in the sense of it's come somewhat word of mouth, right? You look at, there's not a lot online for Rocket City Refugees. There's a website, but it seems very clear. You guys, you get your 501c3 status, and boom, like you're inundated.
Yeah.
More, it's hard to catch up and go and update your website or do this and that because you're doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. And that
I'm constantly solving problems, and I don't have time to get to the administration part of it, the PR part of it. So again, if there's anybody out there who'd love to volunteer and help us out, we'd love to help you.
Troy, bye.
Yeah. I'll find some people.
There you go.
So yeah, how would you put the volunteers to work? Let's kind of just categorize that. What's your vision for that?
So what we're trying to do right now, because we've got one who lives not too far from here, just a couple miles, one of the families. And as I told you before, I live down in South Huntsville, which is where a lot of them are concentrated. That makes it easier for me to get back and forth, to them to help them out. But there's only one of me, and there's, they are growing every day. So we're trying to build volunteer care teams around each family. So those volunteers will do things like come over and help with homework in the afternoon, help with English practice with the mothers who are, have young children at home.
Okay.
And with those young children. In some cases, not everybody is mobile yet. We're looking still for some donated vehicles. But for those who don't have it, taking people to doctor's appointments and the like. So nothing, extremely high speed, but we need help because, again, 1 against 85 right now. And we do have some wonderful volunteers too. Several ladies that came to us. One is a neighbor of one of the families who introduced themselves and started helping. Another is one who we met almost a year ago now. She's been helping us out. And then, of course, my family and some of the other organizations I mentioned, but we need more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because as they integrate more, they're doing more out in the community. So they're playing sports. One of the young boys is playing soccer, and they want to be in clubs and this and that. And that you've got a couple of kids, we all do, that puts a logistics strain on, on the whole process.
Sure.
So something's got to fail. And I want them to be able to do all these things again, because that all goes toward the end goal of full assimilation and integration into society.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Gary?
I was going to say, on top of being I'm not just a one-man show, because he has some volunteers. I mean, Guy does have a full-time job.
Yeah, people keep forgetting that, including me.
No, man, how cool would it be, right, if one of these young children end up being an athletic star or a musical star here in the country and just continue to show, like, if you can just get here, right, and legally, lawfully, all that, these kids can have promise, right? Yeah. And they can flourish and really contribute to society.
Yeah, and they do. That when I look at them, I see so much potential. Some of them had never been to school at all. Some of them for just a couple years before they started. Some of the girls hadn't been at all, or in a long time, because either it was not safe for them to do so in their area, or they were needed at home, to help. So now they have the opportunity to do that. They can go to school and they can be anything, they want to be. We've got one of the boys, he's a engineering whiz. He may make the rocket that takes us to Uranus, after we get done with Mars, if we ever get there. But in the couple of weeks between when they arrived and when they were enrolled in school and started going, as the younger children were breaking toys, he's cannibalizing them and making other things out of them. So they broke a remote control car. He took a cut up water bottle and the motor out of the car and a battery and made himself a little fan and was walking around with him. Like, how do you know how to do that? Well, I looked it up. So the children have an easier time, adjusting, of course, than the older children and the adults do, just like any of us would, because we're set in our ways. But it just makes me happy to see them out there and thriving and learning English, which is another one of our requirements, and doing well. And then we've had, like I mentioned, one birth already. We've had another one in another family. So who knows? That may be the president in 2060 or whenever.
Yeah.
Whenever he's old enough.
Are there any issues? Is there a stigma towards refugees? Are they having in any way difficulty just assimilating into their neighborhoods or, into society here?
Every neighborhood that we have somebody in, they have been very welcoming. Mm-hmm. We haven't had any problems that I can readily think of. I think in some of the high schoolers experienced a little resistance in the very beginning, but they've overcome that, and they're doing very well now.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a big enough community here. If there were, others of their countrymen or from other countries that had aught with Afghanistan, I think that might be a bigger problem. Some of the bigger cities, but I don't think we really experience that here.
Yeah. Well, in our community, it's more of a, I don't want to say transient, but people are always moving in, moving out. So there's, for instance, looking at high school kids, there's a lot more new high school kids than those that have gone from 9th through 12th all together at the same time. So I think that's the difference in our community too.
And because of that, Huntsville is more of a melting pot, so
Correct.
to speak, on a microcosm scale than it is very polarized with different ethnic groups. So yeah. But the city overall has been wonderfully welcoming to everyone.
Yeah, I don't know.
And for that, we appreciate it.
I don't know if you caught it. Before your episode, I interviewed Nadia Nyakasari from RCP Companies, who they developed where the Orion is, the mid city, and she's Persian. Okay. And I guess 2 years ago, Mayor Battle declared, I think it's April 21st, like Persian Day, in honor of Nowruz, the kind of their New Year type thing. So that was pretty cool. So I guess the Persian community is growing, and hopefully they can find things like that, right? So culturally, find people that share their culture.
Oh yeah, and they're all involved in the mosque that's off Sparkman, and they've been helpful as well. So yeah, culturally, I think that they're not on an island, so to speak, though they don't have as much as they would in other places.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that might be good because I want them to maintain their faith, But I also want them to come into the 21st century and learn how to be good citizens here. And that's one of the things that I worried about the most when they were coming. I didn't want people to look at them, in a bad light.
Yeah.
Because unless you've been directly involved with things in that country or in that region, you're not going to understand the same. So we have a lot of discussions about that. And at least the men, they were able to put that out to the families. We'd have talks because they've spent their whole adult lives around Americans. So they did, to a certain extent, understand American culture and how we are. So there wasn't that huge learning curve for them. Like I said before, the children, they adapt quick.
Yeah. Now, have you been involved in any other nonprofits in your life, or is this kind of your first foray?
This is my first jumping off the deep end. Yeah.
What about anybody in your family?
Growing up, we were always a service-oriented family. Mm-hmm. My mother and father both were always out in the community doing something to help somebody else. And so that's where I think I learned it. And it took me a while to get that into my own life. Not that we haven't done small things, but I haven't done anything on this scale before.
Do you think some of it is just naturally you would kind of get to this point of kind of giving back to kind of fill out your career and, kind of your purpose, if you will? On a scale of, maybe you couldn't have foreseen this scale that you're involved in, but was that just kind of nagging at you in a way?
In some ways it probably was, yeah.
Well, I want to throw, Guy may agree or disagree with me, is because of where he was in Afghanistan, you're in a small room. It's probably even smaller than this, isn't it? Or was it?
Oh, in the box?
Yeah.
That was 6 by 6.
Right. So, you're doing work, but you're also talking outside of work, and we're human. You're going to develop a relationship.
Yeah.
We're human beings, and when you see somebody's hurting, or something's going to go bad. I think it's just a everyday thing of you're going to want to do something to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I have to admit, before I went to Afghanistan, I was extremely uneducated about a lot of things. I learned a lot about not just the area and its history, but about their faith as well. Mm-hmm. Now, I might not necessarily agree with everything they believe, but they've got a right to believe it, and they're at their core. I always start. I've been a lot of different places, and in our business, it's about relationships and building that rapport in the first 30 seconds, so that you can do your job, get the information out of the person, get them to help you do what you need to do, whatever the task is. So I eventually, and maybe hopefully not too late in my career, developed this concept that, all right, you got to start somewhere, right? So we're all carbon-based beings.
Yeah.
We all breathe oxygen, and we all drink water. After that, everything else is just icing, So we start building those blocks, and I realized that at the core, we're all the same, one way or the other. And I just, I fell in love with the people. They're good people, and they were just horribly oppressed by everybody that came through there for thousands of years, right? They don't call it the graveyard of empires for nothing. Mm-hmm. Afghanistan is definitely one of my favorite places that I've ever traveled. And now I've brought some of it to Huntsville for everybody to enjoy.
What's the the topography like? Is it hilly?
Where we were, we were in the mountains.
Okay.
So there's mountainous regions, and then when you get down I guess it's southwest by Kandahar, it's high desert. Up in the northeast portion, there's some very fertile lands. Mm-hmm. I didn't make it up there. I heard it was beautiful though. Up by Mazar-e Sharif, and
it's the same thing like in Pakistan, K2. Yeah. Everybody, and they call it the Alps in Pakistan. The Pakistani Alps. I mean, and it's gorgeous. If you pull up pictures, it's just a gorgeous area. I mean, some of that part of the country, I mean, part of the world is, I mean, really beautiful.
Yeah. The food wise, are you familiar with? Is it Tahdig? Do you know what Tahdig is?
I don't.
I used to eat a lot of I think it was Afghan in Virginia, like DC area, Persian restaurants, whatever. But it's like if you order, I don't know, whatever the dish is, but on the very top, it's like a sign of respect if they give you the rice from the bottom of the pot.
Because that's where all the good meat
That's
is.
where all the juices have gone in there, and they'll scrape it, and they'll put this big square or rectangle of rice, if you will, on top of your plate, and that's like a sign of respect. It's called Tahdig.
Okay, I did not know that.
And it may not be called that in every country, Persian country, but and it's really good because it's so flavorful.
Yeah.
And I think we were making something the other night. It's like, oh, let me have the bottom of the pot. I'm like scraping the rice off the bottom.
Yeah, and we've got some excellent cooks in our group too.
Do you?
Yeah, not just the ladies either. Z is a wonderful chef. In fact, he was running for a little while the House of Kebab up there on Sparkman, just north of the intersection with University. So
I love kebab.
If you want Afghan food, we'll bring you some.
I'm going to Virginia tomorrow, and I think I'm going to have Afghan for lunch every day.
Oh yeah,
for a few days, because we don't have enough kebab here.
I'll have him make you some when you come back.
I'll do it.
Yeah,
maybe that's what you need to do for a fundraiser.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Do you want to talk? Can you talk a little bit about your military career? And I liked how you said you're a son of a soldier.
Yeah.
In memory of Jimmy Buffett, right? Son of a sailor.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking about that.
You weren't?
So, on both sides of the family, strong military influence. On my mother's side, they ended up in North Carolina, some of that original fleet of Scotsmen that got run off and ended up in the United States. So, in I think pretty much every war that the United States has ever been in, there's been somebody on one side of the family or another, if not multiple. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a ball turret gunner in a B-17 during World War II. And then he had 3 daughters, so the military duty kind of stopped with him, though some of the sons-in-law got it. On my father's side, again, everybody. And they all wore funny beret hats of one color or another, and then I broke the mold by going into the intel field.
Got it.
And I'm kind of glad I did, because at the time I came in, I probably had better military experiences than if I had been in one of those other jobs. So I came in 1994 as a counterintelligence agent. And that's what I've been doing since. So I'll come up on 30 years of doing that work next year. Did about 10 years on active duty, and it just seemed like time to get out. My wife was an agent as well, and she got out a couple months after we were married in 2001. And about 2 years later, I did. I kick myself sometimes, though, because 2 days after I came out, the promotion list came out, after I got out, rather. And I was number 2 on the list. I didn't realize I was that close. It wouldn't have changed my mind at that time, because the first year and a half we were married, I was gone about 15 months. And I was doing good work and having fun, but you can't start a family like that. So I know that I made the right decision.
Yeah.
Later, I came back and did a little reserve time again. But I spent time at Fort Bragg, a lot of time down in Central and South America. Did a year over in Korea, worked on some good things over there, and then came here to Huntsville in 1998. And this has kind of been my home base ever since. I take strange vacations from time to time to foreign lands, but this is more home now than anything else.
The job brought you to the Arsenal in Huntsville? Okay.
That was my last active duty assignment here. Yeah.
Then you decided to stay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my wife is from Fort Payne, so she's very close to home too.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's where all her family's from.
There's usually always some sort of so tell me about the wife. Okay, there's that's the attraction.
We both did our duty or penance up in D.C. for about 2 years. I taught at the Joint Counterintelligence Training Academy when it was still up in Elkridge, Maryland.
Okay.
and she worked at the Army Counterintelligence Center, and we got the opportunity to come back here, and we did. I just stayed up there for a long time, but the traffic. I was listening to a podcast that you were on talking about the traffic, and so we lived right there at 198 and 295 where they meet. So it was 10 minutes for her to go to work on to Fort Meade. It was 10 minutes for me to go up the road to the schoolhouse. But it would be 45 minutes just to go across 198 there to get a gallon of milk at the grocery store. And if they would have bought me a helicopter, I would have stayed forever, but it wasn't in the budget. So here we are.
We were back in like 2004. My grandmother was still alive and living in McLean. She had lived there since like 1963, just inside the Beltway. And we were building a house out in western Loudoun County. And so there was a period of like 3 months where we had like sold our townhouse in Sterling, and we were building this house out there, right? Like, well, we'll stay with my grandma. And at the time I was working in Tyson's Corner. So it was literally a 4 miles from her door to where I was working. And it would take 50 minutes to an hour to go 4 miles. Yeah. And I thought it was going to be just awesome. Like, oh yeah, we'll live with grandma and it'll take me 15 minutes to get to work and this is going to be wonderful. No, it was aggravating. It was even more aggravating when you're that close and you have to sit in that many traffic lights and whatnot.
That's ridiculous. There was a person who worked with my wife who lived in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And drove 3.5 hours one way. You're spending almost as much time in your car as you are at work. If I got to drive more than 15 minutes to work, I'm not going. I live in a cardboard box. That's too much.
You feel it like for me, I could feel it if it was like an hour and a half. I could feel it. Like I've been in the car too long. Like I'm gonna go crazy if I don't get out of this car. Yeah. So, what is? I guess what's your goal for the next year? Just add more volunteers. And you have enough people who've contacted you and enough people that we're trying to get into the country?
Yeah, unfortunately right now I don't think getting anybody else out. There are those who want to come that we need to get out. Yeah. But I don't think that's in the books right now, or in the cards rather. I'd love to be able to snap my finger and get, all of their extended families out of there. But even if I could, what would I do with them? Yeah. I can only put so many tents up in the backyard.
Yeah.
But, right now we're just, again, we need more volunteers. We need more donations to be able to support them because they're working hard and some of them more than one job. But with the larger families, it takes more, they feel the bite of inflation just like we do who have always been here.
Right.
But even more so, because Z, for example, he's operating a platoon size element. He and his son are both working 2 jobs each, but it still takes extra work to make ends meet. And, I don't want them to, I'm not giving them gold-plated, silverware, but I want them to be able to be comfortable and have everything that they need, just to get shoes for them. That's an $800 operation right there. And young children's feet don't stay the same size for very long. And so, it's not that we're looking for luxury items. We're still kind of in survival mode with them.
So are you tying into any of the other nonprofits in Huntsville? And are they helpful for providing some of the basic services?
They have, some of the churches, we've gotten donations from them. Shoe gift cards are always a big deal. We'll never turn those away, or Walmart gift cards, because we can use those at Walmart or Sam's. And, that bulk helps. The Manna House, the food bank, Fran Fluler over there, if you don't know her, she is a force of nature, and she has been very helpful from day one with all our families, because even though they are, the larger ones on state benefits for that, they still need help to make up the difference. Yeah. So that they'll then have the money available to pay their rent and to buy gas to get people back and forth to places. So she's been amazingly helpful over there. One of the things that I need to get better at is asking for help. I'm not very good at that. I keep trying to do it and find a way to do it without publicizing it. And I'm here.
Have you thought about, maybe some of the thrift stores?
Asbury Park has made some donations for us. Yes.
I mean, those are what I would think of too.
Yeah. How if you could, like, Z's family is an example, but how dangerous is it for them to make that, once it's decided, hey, we can get you out? Is it dangerous for them? Are they leaving at 2 a.m. and to escape?
Yeah. So the story he tells about their escape, you could probably make it into a movie.
Really?
There were already Taliban checkpoints around the airport there in Kabul where the Armada was happening. Military folks are guarding the wall, but the Taliban were already having, they were doing patrols in concentric rings around the airport to catch people trying to get there. So he was dodging Taliban checkpoints. At one point, liberated a Taliban-controlled Toyota truck to throw a bunch of kids in the back and get past the next checkpoint. It was hairy, and they almost didn't get in through the outer perimeter to get inside. But it was because of one of the recommendation letters he had, and was trying to hold it up to the guard. I think it was an Air Force guy, and they let him through. It was not easy. Plus, again, it would be hard if it was just two people doing it.
Yeah.
But we're talking about 17 under the cover of darkness, right. And with at that time 1, 2, 3 that probably couldn't walk on their own because they're babies.
Now, if they had been caught, would they have been killed?
Most likely, yeah.
All of them?
I'm sure.
They would have killed them all? Wow.
I have no doubt.
Man.
And luckily they were able to not be at the place where the explosion happened that took our servicemen and women.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of gates. I believe the hand of God was in it getting them out.
Sure.
And I hope that's the reason, I've had a bunch of close calls over my career too. Maybe that's the reason I was allowed to stick around so I can be here to help them now.
So at what point they get through the guards? There's basically, it's a miracle even, right, that he shows this piece of paper and they wave them through. But at what point are they kind of safe? Like, okay, we've gotten through it and our lives are no longer in danger.
Well,
like where in that journey does that happen?
I think once they got past that checkpoint and they got inside the wire,
okay,
as we would say, they were good.
And there's someone there to receive them or is helping them?
Yeah,
okay.
they were inside the walled part of the Hamid Karzai International Airport.
Okay.
So now I'm getting worried. I'm watching constantly because I didn't, phone chargers are not a thing that you, when you're escaping in the middle of the night, think about taking. So he's got a dead phone now, carrying with him, and I haven't heard from him. And the clock starts ticking 2-3 days. I'm watching the news, just looking, at all the footage, trying to see if I could see him and his son. I knew what they looked like. I didn't know any of the other family. I'd never met them before. So I didn't see anything. Then there was the big explosion. And then we started seeing planes leaving. So it was about a week or 10 days that I was just on pins and needles. And finally I got a call from a strange number, and they were on the ground at the air base in Qatar. So they were handing out phones, and we were communicating by video chat, which was good. And like I said, they were there about a month before they ended up in Fort Dix. I think they hit there on early September of 21.
Wow, the full month of Qatar.
Yeah.
Wow. And how does that get funded then? How are they being sponsored during that time?
That's a good question.
You don't
know.
Okay, that's fine. It was all new to me.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the federal government was paying for it,
sure,
in some way, and
could be USAID.
I think on some levels they were involved. I don't know where all the money came from.
So, but basically, I guess once you end up under U.S. responsibility, they're going to take care of you until they can get you where you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there were camps scattered about the country. I think there was one in Arizona, one in Texas. So it wasn't just everybody up at Fort Dix in New Jersey.
Do you have trouble sleeping at night? Does it take an emotional toll on you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Because, back to snapping my fingers and helping everybody else out, it really hurts me that I can't give more aid to the people that that are left behind. You know, these guys I don't have to worry about anymore. They're safe and they're not going anywhere. They're just going to stick with the plan, stick with the process, and they're going to be here. It's the ones that we left behind, and it's not just their family members. It's some of the other guys that were on the team too, who constantly reach out to him and say, "Hey, can you ask Guy to help us to get us there?" I can't do it. There's just no mechanism, and that kills me.
Yeah.
You know.
Now you mentioned a couple other gentlemen that have founded it with you. Are they equally as involved? And
they are. Yeah, they're physically up in New Jersey.
Okay.
So they're military policemen is where I first met them. We were all assigned over there in the same place in Afghanistan, and we've kept in contact since. And they're with different police agencies up there in New Jersey.
Got it.
So they're my vice president and treasurer.
So were they on that receiving end when they hit Fort Dix? Were they up there for that?
They did go to visit them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there, when we had, I had Jared Hudson. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he's doing stuff similar like Sound of Freedom, right? Where they go out and try to bust sex traffickers and human traffickers and whatnot. And he was talking a little bit about like vigilante groups, and how that can be disruptive. If I just went off and I felt like someone I knew was preying on a child or committing, sex crimes, it'd be better if I went through like the proper channels versus just showing up on their door. Is there, obviously you're trained, you're well trained, but is there any sort of pushback that you get from the authorities or those who may have more of a clear charter than just kind of a nonprofit trying to do their part to extract people from these circumstances? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, again, we weren't an official part of the Armada. They came out officially with the support of the United States
I'm saying
government.
even going forward now, if there was another family, are they looking at like, hey, you're not a government, you're a nonprofit, and we applaud what you're doing, but Yeah,
we really haven't got to that point. I don't know that they would. As long we're going to always color inside the lines. With the legal aspects of it, just to keep our jobs safe, and because it's the right thing to do. It's difficult right now that I don't know that there's any mechanism to safely get them out of, those that remain behind out of the country to a third country to get them here.
Okay.
Because the Taliban controls everything. They control every border crossing. They control transportation. So short of a...
What's the solution, Jerry?
Well,
stealing some helicopters and going in under the cover of darkness,
So, one of the things, I just thought of as you asked that question and Guy was answering is, the immigration system, for whatever you want to say, whether it's broken, whether it's not, it needs to somehow be more streamlined and I'm going to use a story to go with that is. So I had a female come into the office when I was still in the FBI, and she said, "Hey, my husband's an illegal immigrant, and I'm going to, but we want to do the right thing." And so they paid an attorney in Atlanta $5,000, and the attorney did $0. And the only thing I could think of is that attorney realizes that family's never going to come back to me because he's illegal and I'll just have him arrested or whatever. And so I say all that there has to be some assistance. There has to be to get them the immigration statuses, to get them where they need to be. And there also needs to be, we need to look out for those scam artists that are just there to make the quick buck and take advantage of somebody that doesn't know the American system, doesn't know that, hey, we do have laws that protect you, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to look at.
And that's why I'm so glad that there was another organization involved with it, because this is my first experience with anything like this. When I first got the call from him, I was thinking, Guy Hardman's got to figure out a way to do all these things, and I have no idea where to start because I've never been faced with this. So it was, a blessing when I got the first call from the lady at Inspiritus, and she said, "Yeah, we're going to take care of all this administrative stuff." Because man, I wouldn't have any idea where to start. The few things that I've had to do, after they tagged out, because they were only in it for the first 240 days, per their agreement with the government, that's the initial support package. The few things that I've had to do, as you all know in here, the federal government and their instructions and the way different agencies operate, they're not always pointed in the same direction. And I've learned that, especially with the ones that we've been dealing with. So
yeah,
I'm glad that they knocked a lot of that out in the very beginning. And then aside from that initial onslaught of paperwork, getting the work permits, getting the Social Security numbers issued, they also contracted with a local law firm to handle the immigration part of it. And I didn't realize how expensive and labor intensive that was. It's very expensive to become a United States citizen and to get a green card. I had no idea.
Well, and again, it goes back to like those law firms that I was aware of. I mean, at the end of the day, I couldn't even help this. She didn't even remember his name, but it was that law clerk or the law firm was taking advantage of somebody that didn't know our system.
Yeah.
And it goes back to your folks don't know our system, let alone we know our system enough. And I mean, I think that's one of the things we have to, as a country, figure out. I mean, we have all the illegal immigrants and, a path forward somewhere where we can say, okay, if you're going to be contributing to our society, these are the steps you'll have to do, but don't make it like takes 5 years to do it. Which I've heard stories about that too. It takes 5-10 years for someone to get their citizenship.
Well, we're 2 years in right now on the initial asylum claim, and they just sent out letters for a 24-month extension. So.
And that's exactly my point. I mean, and they're wanting to contribute to society.
Yeah.
They want to do, and we're just kind of doing the proverbial Heisman to them.
Yeah.
And say, well, yeah, we'll get to it. And again, 2 years into it.
And so then that causes my next batch of problems, because when they get driver's license, the driver's license is only good until the date on the work permit.
Right.
So when they send out the 2-year extension on the work permit, they don't send out a new work permit because that's more money. They say, well, just put this letter with the work permit, and that extends it to this date.
And trying to explain it to the state.
And then I have to go explain that to somebody who has never had anything like this before. So I spend, a lot of time telling the same story over and over again.
Right.
And getting, again, kind of training them on what their own rules are, because the Afghan situation is a completely different one than a lot of, the people coming here by other methods.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not only that, but then I'm having to learn how to teach these people, all the Afghans things. For example, thermostat. They got here on January the 10th.
And it's cold.
It was very cold, right? Mm-hmm. So we put them in the house. We fed them that night. And I come back in the morning. I said, look, I'll just, rest, chill. You're safe now. I'm going to come back and see you tomorrow. I get back in there, and it's like 82. I said, whoa, what is going on?
They're used to
that. We were cold. And I said, okay, but the higher the number in the winter, the more it's going to cost. And the lower the number in the summer, the more it's going to cost. And what did they know about that?
Yeah, because it's, right.
But father and son went secure real quick, and I saw the light bulb come up over Z's head, and he said, oh, this is not the base. Because for 4 months, while they were at Fort Dix, they could jack it up as high as they wanted to, and nobody was paying a dime for it. So that's become our new family motto: this is not the base.
This is not the base. Well, yeah, you kind of mentioned something that, again, when I had the human trafficker on, we're talking about people coming up through the southern border through the cartel. Right, the cartel is now working through Mexico City to give people documentation. Hey, show up to the border, and they're going to let you through, and they're going to give you a court date 7 years from now to whatever, discuss your status. Then there's other methods, right? And we're highlighting that today, and like it's sometimes hard just as a layman, like, okay, what's going on? What are our immigration laws? What's the appropriate way to come in? How do you get in? Right. How much does it cost? Yeah. And obviously the cartel is brutal to these people. They probably rape them and beat them, as they take their money and send them on their way. But, man.
Yeah, we make it very hard to follow those rules in this country. That's what I've learned. And I hate that. I don't know what the right answer is, so I'm not going to.
I don't know either.
But we do need to, got to fix it on some level, because there are good people from other lands that, that are escaping one form or another of persecution and would be better off here and would be a benefit to society.
Right. And I mean, they're going to contribute. I mean, just like,
but it's very hard to get them here and get them here legally.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
well, and I'm hopefully encouraged that here in the Rocket City, once you become aware of all the organizations out there, like the Manna House. I was over at the Manna House about 2 months ago with our church group. I couldn't believe what they were generously giving away to anyone. I was like, hey, so what's the criteria? Like, anybody can come and get food.
Yep.
Anybody. And they were giving out very quality produce to anybody that needed it, right? And you don't really need 6 bushels of grapes because they can go bad. But I was touched just through that one little experience of just what the Manna House does. And I've interviewed Downtown Rescue Mission. Their pantry is incredible. Right. The number of meals that they provide to the homeless, and then the homeless who want to break out of homelessness, right? And they have a whole program for you can live there for a year, and they help you work and try to get on your feet. So there's just so many great nonprofits. Are they aware of Rocket City refugees? If they're not, but there's got to be something here.
Right.
Thrive Alabama, they provide health care to anybody who doesn't have. There's 92,000 people in Greater Huntsville who don't have medical insurance.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what they're there for, is to help these people.
There's another organization, I think it's called One Generation Away.
Really?
And they do it, I think they might do it quarterly, but they'll set up like at a Grissom High School parking lot. And all you do is you drive up and you just drive through, and they just fill you up with,
whatever.
It's shelf staples type of stuff. And they just fill, no questions asked. You just drive through, and it's called One Generation Away. And they get their stuff from grocery stores, and I mean, and it's not bad stuff by no means. It's just people, the grocery stores will donate and everything. So.
Wow. Well, I'm hoping that people will listen to this, and that somehow connections can be made for Guy and what you're doing.
I do too, because we want to grow. Like I said, I don't know if we'll be doing this in 20 years, but 4, 5, 7, until we can get them on their feet, and I want to give them the best service that we can, again, because they've served us,
Yeah. Do you think at some point we could have Z on the program? Would that not be a good idea? Need some more time?
Let's think about it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just think it would be really cool at some point to go full circle.
I think he would enjoy that, yeah. We just have to keep him on task. He's a very good storyteller too, and he would tell these amazing stories about the early days of the war when they were up in the mountains, on the east side, and just I think you'd enjoy it. You might enjoy it more offline though.
What have you learned about yourself, I guess, since starting the days leading up to creating Rocket City Refugees, but what have you learned?
I had a feeling you were going to ask something like that, and I tried to think about it, but I couldn't think of any good answers. I have learned that I thought I was patient before, but that has increased exponentially in the last year and 8 months. It had to. Again,
dealing with the government.
Well, not just the government, but these guys as well. Our relationship was completely different when I was in their house.
Right.
It was their rules, and they taught me how to operate,
right.
And be safe and effective there. And now I'm having to do it and relearn, just like the thermostat thing, 1,000 other tasks that we all take for granted because we've just, we've always done them since we've been alive, and their muscle memory. Teaching little things like you have to pay your rent on time, or that causes a problem, and about credit cards and this and that. And I'm constantly battling two things. I'm battling that pull back to the homeland and all the bad things that are still happening there to their families and friends that are left behind, and the Afghan news network. And by that I mean all the other people who are here but in other parts of the country, and some of them in other countries, and it's constantly, well, I got this over here. Well, I got this over here. Well, hey, he got that. Shouldn't I get this? and trying to explain little things like that to them. So the amount of patience that I have with saying things over and over again, and I wouldn't call myself an impatient man, but what I have now and what I had in January 2022, there's a great deal of real estate between those two. Yeah. That's one thing that I've learned.
Has your wife noticed that increase in patience?
I don't know. Yeah, that'd be a question better for her. I don't know. I have always, I've always liked to help people. Mm-hmm. But as we discussed earlier, I hadn't been involved in any large scale projects like this. Somebody needed some help and said, "Hey, I need help doing this. I need help doing that." I'll be one of the first to, if not the first to jump on it. But it's been very rewarding to help people that couldn't otherwise help themselves.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how time and labor intensive it was going to be before they came here. Again, remember, this just started out with one family, and now we have many. We were originally going to send them out to Texas. I have a friend out there who was in Afghanistan with us in Ghazni. He's a Texas game warden on a border patrol task force. So they see a lot of these people coming through the border too, and it's not just your Central and South American types. There's a lot of other ethnicities and people from other countries coming through as well, as we see on the news, but we don't know the extent of it. So we were initially going to send him out there because we figured Texas, Afghanistan, it's very similar. We had a lot of things set up, but he spends 3 weeks a month on the border. And knowing what I know now, I'm glad we didn't send him out there, because as much as he would want to, it would have been impossible, because he's got 2 young children and a wife, and then the work. It would have been impossible for him to give them, a fraction of the support that I have come to find that they need. Lucky for me, everybody's right here. My children are older. They're 17 and 19, so they don't require as much day-to-day help, as others would. So I've learned that too, that when you think you know what you're getting into, you really don't until it's all over. And, we're not done yet. So, but it's good to finally be in a position in my life where I'm able to help somebody else.
Yeah.
On what I believe is a really meaningful level. I mean, these people can go to sleep at night now, knowing that nobody's going to come and kick in their door and, take them out into the darkness. They couldn't do that in January of 2021.
Yeah. Wow. Your kids been impacted by this to the extent that they know what you're doing?
Yeah. And I mean, they
know the families.
They've participated too. Yeah.
So it gives them a different perspective.
Yeah. They have some similar age ones, with both of mine, and it does give them a different perspective, that you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. You've got nice things now and a roof over your head, but they did it one time too. And because things changed that were beyond their control, they didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this has been good, and this is very informative. Do you have any final thoughts or any other things you want to cover related to this that we haven't touched on?
No, I would just ask that, if you're led to help us out, to contact us. We do have a website. Hey, if you're good at PR and social media type stuff, if you look at our accounts, you'll know immediately that I need help with that. That's unfortunately the thing that falls off the first page, so to speak, the most, because we're constantly solving problems in these issues, and I don't get to the things that get our name out there, and that's what we really want to do. So if you're led to help that way, if you're led to donate your time or money, we would love it, and I can promise you it will go to a good cause. You can email us directly at rocketcityrefugees@gmail.com or contact us through the website. We have an Instagram and a Facebook as well. So,
Carrie, any final thoughts or?
The only thing I could think of is that we need to put the word out to businesses too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think, that's one of the big things is that businesses, that if they need employees, that you hear about all the time, be willing to accept some other folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're good, hardworking Good hardworking boys and girls.
Right.
There's still a shortage in workers, right? Or in good workers.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's if they show up every day, that's a good worker, right?
Yeah, true that.
But I do want to thank everybody who has helped us in the past. Like I said, the churches are too numerous to mention. Some of the top ones that just pop up are Mount Zion, Huntsville First Baptist, ACW Electric, like I mentioned, ABC Realty. They've been wonderful. That's another thing, another battle or challenge rather, that we had. They come here with nothing. Yeah, they've got a social security number, but there's nothing behind it. In a lot of cases,
yeah, I'm not gonna rent to you because you have no
zero on a credit check is
Yeah.
worse than bad credit, right? And so that that's another thing, which is another need that we have. Somebody who is good at financial advice, that in combination with our interpreter that we have, can help them understand some of these things.
Right.
So we need help. We need bodies. I can't do it all anymore. I've tried. I used to have hair down to my shoulders, and in a year and a half, I've lost it all. No. But yeah, we would love to have you. We'd love to grow our family so that we can give them better support and ultimately start giving back to the community, because that's another one of our requirements too. I don't want them to just come here and suck off the system. Okay. I want them to become a part of the community and give back. Right. And they understand that, because these guys, they are big on community within themselves, and they realize that that Huntsville has helped them out quite a bit. The businesses and the churches and that. Now I want them to get in a position where they can give back. Give to the next generation, give to the next people in need. I think that's only fair. The whole pay it forward concept.
right.
Here's a question you may not know the answer to, but are across the U.S., are there organizations like yours in most cities? And,
I don't know.
And citizens like you who are trying to bring refugees over?
Yeah, well, like I said before, each state has an identified state refugee coordinator. That's
right.
That's at the interaction with the Department of State and CIS level. And then there are other organizations. I don't know if there's any much smaller than ours, but I know there are some big ones, and some bigger name ones. A lot of former SOF guys started up their own programs. And yeah, so
I would imagine
I'm sure there's some. A lot of them went to North Carolina as well, because that's where a lot of the people that they had been with in Afghanistan were already. Yeah. So now there's a huge Afghan community there now, in Fayetteville and some of the other places. But each one kind of has their own. Not that they wouldn't help others, but they're helping the people that they knew and that helped them. And that's kind of how we started. Like I said, some of the other families we've got that are kind of on the sidelines, we do provide support to, but they were part of the major effort as well. So I think it's mostly based on the connections that individuals had with the people that they're trying to help directly. That's how it started, and then it grows.
Right.
And we'd love to grow it.
Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And I look forward to the next time we talk, whether that's just with you or some of the family members. And hats off to you.
Thank you.
Just another wonderful organization here in the area.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Carrie.
Yes, sir.
Until next time.
All right.